Good morning, friends. I'm Michael Kovnat, and this is the Next Big Idea Daily. Now, happiness might not sound like a business strategy, but Arthur C. Brooks, Harvard professor, Atlantic columnist, and all-around happiness guru, says it's the most important metric of all. In his new book, The Happiness Files, Insights on Work and Life, Arthur argues that your life is a startup, and you're the founder, CEO, maybe even the unpaid intern, which means you've got to manage your most important asset, yourself. From burnout to big career shifts, awkward meetings to meaningful success, this book covers it all with warmth, wisdom, and just the right amount of data. Here's Arthur to share 5 of his big ideas.
Hi, friends. I'm Arthur Brooks. I'm a professor at the Harvard Business School and the Harvard Kennedy School, and I'm also a columnist at The Atlantic. My job is to write, speak, and teach about the science of happiness. That might not sound like a very business-like topic, but in point of fact, happiness is really all about the business of life. I have a new book out that talks about this. It's called The Happiness Files. The Happiness Files is a curated collection of my columns from The Atlantic on work and life. Do you want to be happier in your work and life? I assume you do. Most people do. Well, I make the case that your life is kind of like a business, a startup business at that, and you should manage it as such. You Incorporated. You're the founder. You're the startup entrepreneur. What does that mean? Well, that means that you need to be able to take risk. That means you need to know the currency of the fortune you're trying to accumulate, and not just getting richer, not having more power or the admiration of strangers or these worldly things, but getting what you really want, which is more love and happiness in your life. So how do we do that? The answer is, well, sort of 5 things. Let me tell you a little bit about each one. The first is managing yourself. Why is that important? Well, because in the startup of your life, you're the most important employee. So you better manage your best employee. You might as well manage the person who's responsible for the whole enterprise. Self-management is a skill that successful people have. More importantly, it's a skill that happy people have. Now, some people are very successful in managing their professional lives, but managing their personal lives is a different kettle of fish. Why they're different and why self-management for some people is harder than professional management. We'll talk about philosophy and religious faith, friendships, family, romantic relationships, how these feel different than just getting ahead at work, but they don't have to. You can treat them in much the same way with a few basic ideas that are taken from neuroscience and behavioral science, and you'll see the details on that. We'll also talk and the work on managing yourself on issues such as burnout. Are you burned out? Are you spending time at work on boring things or inconsequential things? Do you feel unappreciated? What do you do about that? Well, you need to understand yourself and understand why you're in some unproductive patterns in your life. This section walks you through each problem that blurs the line between the personal and the professional, such that you can resolve some of these issues in your life and not feel the burnout. This will help you put on your own oxygen mask first, as it were, so that you'll be more successful in your job and in your life. How do you build your career? Once you're managing yourself, once you're able to be a great employee to yourself, what are you trying to do? How are you trying to build your career? Well, a lot of people think about it when they're in their 20s. They think this is the building phase of their career. But the truth of the matter is that in the business of your life, this is an ongoing operation. It's a process of exploration and discovery. The truth of the matter is that you're probably different than other people. Do you have the kind of linear career where you go from one thing to the next, where everything that you do is bigger and better and grander than the last? Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe you're more of a spiral where your career is actually a set of mini careers of 7 to 12 years. And sometimes you make more money and sometimes less, but you're setting it up as an adventure of your own making. It's important to know the kind of person that you are. And this section will also help you know when it's the right time to switch jobs. A lot of people struggle with this. They're afraid of these kinds of changes. I don't like my job, but will I be happier? The data are here. You probably will be, as a matter of fact. Knowledge tends to give you courage because you can understand the experience that other people have and the experience that you can expect when you're moving from job to job. And indeed, if you're looking at a career change, we'll talk about that too. How to trust your gut when it's time to make a change. As a matter of fact, I will give you a rubric, a tool for what you should be listening to in your own feelings in your gut for the kind of change that you want to make. What should you be looking for? What should you be avoiding? Now, in the process of having a successful career and a successful life, one of the most important skills that you have is, of course, dealing with other people, basic communication and connection. Communication and connection in the workplace, and at home for that matter, are really all about managing the enterprise of your life and having an enterprise that gets better and better as the years go by. You'll learn how to take and give criticism well based on the best communications literature out there, the social psychology that talks about people who are really good at giving criticism and bad at taking it, or vice versa. What does good criticism look like? Also, how do you give a great compliment? How do you talk to people that you don't know? If you're an introvert, how can you sometimes act as if you're an extrovert, which is a nice thing to be able to do, part of the repertoire of communication that you'd like to have, because this will build the connections with other people. And by the way, where should you not connect and communicate with other people if you can avoid it? Here's the answer. Meetings. I'm going to arm you with the data that show that you should eliminate as many meetings as you possibly can. Want to be happier? Stay away from the meetings, and certainly don't call them if you can possibly avoid it. Work-life balance. I hate that expression. Why? Because work-life balance sounds like you got to balance two different things. And the truth of the matter is, if you want to be happy in the enterprise of your life, your work and your life are part of the same phenomenon, because your work should be part of your life. It shouldn't be all of it. You should have other things in your life that are not involved with your job, for sure. Family comes to mind, friendship comes to mind, all kinds of things that are not your work time, but your work should be part of your life. And so I don't use work-life balance. I talk about work-life integration, because that's really what we want. We want these things to work together. Iron sharpens iron, and your work and the rest of your life should be the iron that sharpen each other. How do you do it? What are the boundaries? Where does your work stop and your life start in a way that actually makes your work better and your life better? What's the best way to work with people in the workplace that don't understand this? What do you do about people that might not be the best colleagues, that are calling you to do things that make your life a little bit worse? Well, that's what we'll talk about in this section on balancing work, life, and relationships. Sorry, integrating work, life, and relationships. Last but not least is success. It's what you want. At the end of the day, with any kind of startup that you have, you better know what the end is, and you better keep it in mind. What do you want? Now, if you're starting a little company, you might say to yourself, what's success? It's getting bought by some bigger company, or getting to the initial public offering or something like that. Well, how do you define success for the startup of your life? You thought about that? What does success mean to you? Hint, don't denominate it in dollars if you want to be a happy person. This is not to say that money is unimportant. Quite the contrary. It's very important for doing all kinds of things. But the metric that we choose to understand our own personal success is of critical importance, because that's one of the ways that we choose to manage ourselves, is with respect to that metric. We need to understand that success will lead you to misery if you're only talking about money, power, pleasure, fame, prestige, title, position. Rather, those things are intermediate goods to the things that we really want, which is love and satisfaction and relationships and the faith and the service that we want to actually have in our lives. How do we define that kind of success? How do we measure that kind of success? And by the way, this will not make you lose your edge. On the contrary, when you know the success that you're shooting for, you know how to measure it. Boy, does that make you want to show up for work and do your very best every day. And then it makes you want to go home and do your very best at home as well. You'll find that defining success and measuring it for your life as a startup, and it's not just those worldly measures, can be the game changer in your life. For some people, succeeding feels really better. They got to the finish line and they said, that's it? What that's all about is the importance of making progress. So for the business of your life, you need to always be making progress. My life, like yours, is a startup. And I want you to be happier over the business of making that the most gloriously successful startup you can possibly imagine.
Thank you, Arthur. All right, everyone, you can get a copy of the Happiness Files using the link in the episode notes. That's our show for the day. If you got something out of it, please leave us a 5-star rating and a glowing review so others can find it too. And remember, go to nextbigideaclub.com to join our hardback subscription club, where we'll send you the best new nonfiction books as selected by our curators, Adam Grant, Malcolm Gladwell, Susan Cain, and Daniel Pink. And if you use the code DAILY, you'll get a 20% discount. That's nextbigideaclub.com and use the code DAILY. And stay tuned to the Next Big Idea Daily this week. We'll be bringing you lots of big ideas that will make your life a little brighter. I'm Michael Kovnat. See you tomorrow.